Somewhere outside Twin Falls right now, there is a field that was plowed, planted, and fed this spring. And the state of Idaho has told the farmer to stop watering it, not cut back. Stop. The crop is already in the ground. Take that one field and times it by 500,000 acres and you have the quietest disaster in America. The Snake River is set to run at 70% of normal this year. The water under it is the lowest it has ever been. And on the fields that lose, the dust is already starting to lift off bare dirt. This is not a guess for some far-off year. On April 2nd, 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation and the Army Corps of Engineers put the spring flow into the Snake River at a meter near Idaho Falls at 2.3 million acre-feet, 70% of normal. 2 weeks later, the state put a number on the harm. The older farms near Twin Falls would come up 181,600 acre-feet short, the biggest gap ever recorded in this fight. By May, Idaho was putting the legal version of a shutoff notice on wells newer than a water right from 1900. The governor had already called a drought emergency for the whole state. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The Snake River is not running low because the snow forgot to fall on one bad winter. It is running low because the thing under it, the hidden water that made farming this desert possible in the first place, has been draining for 50 years, and almost nobody outside Idaho has ever heard its name. It is called the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer, and it is one of the biggest in the country. Picture a curve of cracked black lava almost 11,000 square miles wide, bending across southern Idaho from the edge of Yellowstone all the way toward the Oregon line. Under the farms, the towns, the roads, and the potato sheds, that lava is soaked with water. For most of the last 100 years, it held more than anyone could use. The land on top of it should be empty. The Eastern Snake River Plain gets between 8 and 14 inches of rain a year. That is high desert. By every rule nature wrote for this place, you should not be able to farm it. And yet 3 million acres out there turn green every summer. Idaho grows more potatoes than any other state, feeds one of the biggest dairy businesses in the country, and ships food to stores in all 50. None of that is supposed to be possible. It happened because of the water in the rock. To see how this got built, you have to go back to the 1860s. Mormon settlers were the first to cut into the Snake River in eastern Idaho, digging ditches to push water onto dry ground in the years it did not rain. In 1894, Congress passed the Carey Act, which let private companies build canals and sell the water. In 1905, near Twin Falls, they finished Milner Dam and turned the Snake River sideways into a web of canals. More than 200,000 acres of sagebrush became farmland. They called it the Magic Valley, and the name stuck because what happened there looked like magic. Here's the part almost nobody knows. In those early years, the farmers flooded their fields. They let huge sheets of water spread across the dirt, and most of it sank straight down through the lava and into the water below. They were not just watering crops, they were filling the rock. Between 1907 and 1959, the water level between Kimberly and Bliss rose by 60 to 70 feet. The springs along the Snake River Canyon, fed by all that extra water, grew. By 1951, the springs between Milner Dam and King Hill were pouring out around 6,820 cubic feet of water every second. The water in the rock was fuller than it had been in hundreds of years, and it was full because of farming. Then the farming changed. In the 1950s and 1960s, the sprinkler showed up. Sprinklers waste less. They put water on the crop and almost nothing on the ground. At the same time, farmers stopped leaning only on canals and started drilling wells, pulling water straight up out of the rock instead of letting it soak back in. Less water going in, more water coming out. The rock started to drain. Between 1975 and 1995, water levels across parts of the plain dropped. The springs in the canyon, the ones that had grown for half a century, began to shrink. The water that flood farming had filled, sprinklers and wells were quietly draining. By the spring of 2023, the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer hit its lowest level since real measurements began in 1950, the lowest ever recorded, and that was the year before the dry one. Now, zoom in on the fight, because this is where it stops being rock and starts being people against people. Idaho runs on a rule called first in time, first in right. The oldest water rights get served first. The newest get served last, or not at all. The canal companies near Twin Falls, the ones that pull from the river and the springs, hold rights going back to around 1900. The farmers who drilled wells into the rock came later, mostly after the 1950s. On paper, that makes the well farmers newer, and newer is a dangerous word in a dry year. In 2005, 7 canal companies and water districts that deliver Snake River water to about 550,000 acres formed a group and filed what is called a delivery call. Their case was simple, and it turned out to be right. The well farmers pumping the rock were draining the springs and the river that the canal farmers leaned on. The state looked at it for years and agreed. The river and the water in the rock, Idaho decided, are one linked system, and pumping the rock hurts the people downstream. The way it works is simple. Think of the water in the rock as a giant sponge made of cracked lava, the size of a small state, sitting tilted under southern Idaho. Water soaks in at the high end near Yellowstone and creeps slowly downhill through the cracks. Where the lava meets the Snake River Canyon, near a place called Thousand Springs, the sponge leaks out the side. Clear, cold water, a steady 58 degrees, pours straight out of the canyon walls and back into the river. 11 of the 65 biggest cold springs in the whole United States sit along that one stretch of canyon. Those springs are the part that breaks first. When you stop soaking the sponge from the top and start squeezing it from below with wells, the edge of the sponge, the springs in the canyon wall, is where the water vanishes first. The river loses the springs. The canal farmers lose the river, and the well farmers who caused it are the last ones allowed by law to keep pumping. That is the whole fight in one sentence. Jay Barlogi runs the Twin Falls Canal Company, one of the 7 in the group, and has since 1992. He has said on the record that his company gets about 80% of its water from those springs flowing out of the rock. When the state worked out his 2024 gap at 74,100 acre-feet, he put it in terms anyone can feel. That is about 12 days of water. 12 days, gone, in a season that needs every one of them. On May 30th, 2024, the math finally came due. The Idaho Department of Water Resources put out a shutoff order against 6 water districts, holders of rights newer than 1954. Roughly 500,000 acres, half of all the well-watered land on the Eastern Plain, were told to stop. Farmers who had already plowed, planted, and fed their fields were told to walk away from them or face fines. Crews started driving out and tying red notices to pumps. For a few weeks, Eastern Idaho stared at the chance of 500,000 acres going brown in a single season. Then the two sides, who had been suing each other for the better part of 2 decades, did the only thing left. They cut a deal. If you are finding this useful, subscribe. We cover water crises, droughts, and the slow fights over them like this one every week, with the full picture you need to really follow what is going on. By November of 2024, there was a new plan. Instead of the old fixed amount, the well districts now agreed to hand the canal group up to 75,000 acre-feet of stored water a year, but only when the older farms really need it. More than that, the plan owned up to something the old one never had. The Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer is shrinking for the long haul, and it is not coming back on its own. The deal did not fix the water in the rock. It spread out the pain and bought time. Time ran out fast. The water year that started in October of 2024 came in dry. A parched fall left the soil hard before winter even began. The spring was warm and short on rain, and the snow that did fall melted early and ran off before it could soak in. It ended up the 3rd warmest water year on record and the 4th warmest growing season. By the time the runoff was counted, the Snake River had given only about 78% of normal at the Heisey meter. Then came 2026, and it was worse. On April 2nd, the Bureau of Reclamation and the Army Corps set 2.3 million acre-feet of flow at Heisey for April through July, 70% of normal. The feeder streams looked even thinner. On the Henry's Fork, one of the Snake's main side streams, forecasters put the spring and summer natural flow at around 62% of normal, near the lowest in 50 years, and in the upper Henry's Fork, the second lowest in 93 years of records, beaten only by 1934. On April 16th, the state found the older farms facing a record gap of 181,600 acre-feet. The governor called a drought emergency for all of Idaho, and in May, the shutoff machine started up again, this time reaching back to water rights newer than October 11th, 1900. Pump after pump, district after district, told to prove they were covered or shut down. Now pull back and watch it fall, one layer at a time. First, the river itself. In a normal summer, the Snake River below Milner Dam already runs close to dry, because every drop above the dam gets pulled out for farms. That is on purpose. But in a 70% year, the squeeze starts earlier and lasts longer. Above Milner, the water is gone before it ever reaches the canyon. The river that carved this plain spends its summer fully claimed, with nothing left to spare. Second, the springs. Thousand Springs, the biggest natural outlet of the water in the rock, has been thinning for decades, and every dry year and every running well pulls it down more. The clear 58-degree water still pours from the canyon walls near Hagerman and Bliss. There is just less of it, year after year, and the fish farms, the power plants, and the river stretches that lean on it all feel the drop. Third, the the farms, and the small towns. This is where the dust comes in. When a field is shut off, the crop in it does not get watered. The plants give out. The soil that was wet and worked in April bakes hard, cracks, and starts to blow. Drive the back roads of the Eastern Plain in a shut-off year, and you pass fields that were supposed to be green, sitting bare, with a center pivot sprinkler parked in the middle of them, not turning. Nobody has put a clean number on how many acres blew away this year, but the farmers can see it on their windshields. Fourth, the area's money. The Magic Valley is one of the most packed farming and dairy areas in the country, and it is all wired together. The dairies lean on hay grown by their neighbors. The potato sheds, the food plants, the truckers, the supply sellers, the gear dealers, and the banks all sit downstream of the same water. When 500,000 acres are at risk, the loss does not stay in the field. It moves through grain dealers and warehouses and loan books, the way a power outage moves through a grid. Fifth, your plate. Idaho grows a huge share of the potatoes that become the fries and the bagged spuds in stores in all 50 states. A potato grower named Jeff Van Orden put it plainly at a water meeting this April. He said the potatoes he grows end up on dinner plates all over the country, and that the fight over the water that makes them is only getting worse. A water shortage in a high desert most Americans will never visit is, quietly, a food story for the whole country. Idaho has been warned by its own past. The water in the rock that all of this rests on was at its fullest in the early 1950s, lifted 60 to 70 feet by the wasteful, soaking flood farming of the early settlers. Everything that has happened since, the sprinklers, the wells, the saving, has been pulling that gift back out of the ground. The plain spent half a century filling the rock by accident, and it has spent the half-century since draining it on purpose and calling it progress. There is a darker echo too. One farmer in eastern Idaho, fighting his own shutoff, named the corner the whole system is now in. He said that in a year like this, growers end up using 4 years' worth of water in one, and then have nothing left for the next. That is not a drought. A drought ends when the rain comes back. This is the slow truth that the water was always being used faster than it came in, and that the bill was just being pushed downstream to whoever was youngest, newest, and least protected. So the questions stack up over the plain tonight. If the water in the rock is already at its lowest level since 1950, what happens the next time the snow truly fails? How do you tell a family that has farmed the same ground for 4 generations that their wells are newer and the river that runs past their gate is not theirs to touch? What happens to a nation's food supply that leans on a desert staying green by draining a sponge of rock that took thousands of years to fill? And how many more deals can 2 sides cut before there is simply not enough water left to split? Nobody in Idaho can answer those yet. The data does not say. The fight just moves to next season. For now, the water in the canyon is still falling out of the rock near Hagerman, clear and cold and 58 degrees, the way it has for thousands of years, only thinner. The Snake River is still being pulled apart above Milner Dam, every drop claimed before it reaches the bottom of the canyon. And somewhere outside Twin Falls, on the field where this started, the crop is gone, the pivot is parked, and a little more of the dirt the river used to keep alive lifts off the ground and blows east on the afternoon wind.